The Art of Possibility by Roz and Ben Zander. Chapter 1. It's all invented. A shoe factory sends two marketing scouts to a region of Africa to study the prospects for expanding business. One sends back a telegram saying, "Situation hopeless, stop. No one wears shoes." The other writes back triumphantly, "Glorious business opportunity, stop. They have no shoes." To the marketing expert who sees no shoes, all the evidence points to hopelessness. To his colleague, the same conditions point to abundance and possibility. Each scout comes to the scene with his own perspective. Each returns telling a different tale. Indeed, all of life comes to us in narrative form. It's a story we tell. The roots of this phenomenon go much deeper than just attitude or personality. Experiments in neuroscience have demonstrated that we reach an understanding of the world in roughly this way. The frames our minds create, define, and confine what we perceive to be possible. Every problem, every dilemma, every dead end we find ourselves facing in life only appears unsolvable inside a particular frame or point of view. Enlarge the box to create another frame around the data, and problems vanish while new opportunities appear. This practice we refer to by the catchphrase, "It's all invented," is the most fundamental of all the practices we present in this book. When you bring to mind "it's all invented," you remember that it's all the story you tell, not just some of it, but all of it. And remember, too, that every story you tell is founded on a network of hidden assumptions. If you learn to notice and distinguish these stories, you will be able to break through the barriers of any box that contains unwanted conditions and create other conditions or narratives that support the life you envision for yourself and those around you. We do not mean that you can just make anything up and have it magically appear. We mean that you can shift the framework to one whose underlying assumptions allow for the conditions you desire. Let your thoughts and actions spring from this new framework and see what happens. The practice. A simple way to practice "it's all invented" is to ask yourself this question: what assumption am I making that I'm not aware I'm making that gives me what I see? And when you have an answer to that question, ask yourself this one: what might I now invent that I haven't yet invented that would give me other options? Chapter 2, Stepping into a Universe of Possibility. Let us suppose now that a universe of possibilities stretches beyond the world of measurement to include all worlds, infinite, generative, and abundant, unimpeded on a daily basis by the concern for survival, free from the generalized assumption of scarcity. A person stands in the great space of possibility in a posture of openness with an unfettered imagination for what can be. Many people's lives are in daily jeopardy, and they must and do concentrate on staying alive, as any one of us would if held up on the street or lost at sea. That is not the same as survival thinking, which is the undiscriminating, ongoing attitude that life is dangerous and that one must put one's energy into looking out for number one. True scarcity and scarcity thinking are different phenomena as well. There are regions of the world where resources are locally scarce, where people lack for their most fundamental needs. However, scarcity thinking is an attitude as prevalent among the well-heeled as among the down at heel, and remains unaltered by a change in circumstance. It is a fatalistic outlook as profiled by the English economist Thomas Malthus in his 1798 essay on the principle of population that predicts that supplies will become scarce. Now we come to the heart of the matter. What is the practice that orientates you to a universe of possibility? It is a practice for revealing the hidden framework from which the world of measurement springs. When you see how thoroughly that framework, like the box around the 9 dots, rules your life, you will have located yourself in the realm of possibility beyond it. So first ask yourself, how are my thoughts and actions in this moment reflections of the measurement world? You look for thoughts and actions that reflect survival and scarcity, capacity and competition, attachment, anxiety. Notice that the question is not, are my thoughts, which is a question of assessment, but how are my thoughts, which is a true inquiry. See how easy it is to argue that you are an exception, that you personally are not governed by any such set of assumptions. This, of course, is another example of the measurement world at work. Michelangelo is often quoted as having said that inside every block of stone or marble dwells a beautiful statue. One need only remove the excess material to reveal the work of art within. If we were to apply this visionary concept to education, it would be pointless to compare one child to another. Instead, all the energy would be focused on chipping away at the stone, getting rid of whatever it is in the way of each child's developing skills, mastery, and self-expression. We call this practice giving an A. It is an enlivening way of approaching people that promises to transform you as well as them. It is a shift in attitude that makes it possible for you to speak freely about your own thoughts and feelings, while at the same time, you support others to be all they dream of being. The practice of giving an A transports your relationships from the world of measurement into the universe of possibility. A can be given to anyone in any walk of life, to a waitress, to your employer, to your mother-in-law, to the members of the opposite team, and to the other drivers in traffic. When you give an A, you find yourself speaking to people not from a place of measuring how they stack up against your standards, but from a place of respect that gives them room to realize themselves. Your eye is on the statue within the roughness of the uncut stone. This A is not an expectation to live up to, but a possibility to live into. We talked of many things that afternoon in the home for the elderly in Boston. Our laughter and singing, 50 strong, ignited the air in the once dingy room. We challenged assumptions about old age and pointed toward some new beginnings. At 3:30, I opened the floor to questions. There were many. One lady asked in a heavy German Jewish accent, "Why do you bother to come here? You're a talented young man. Why do you waste your time with a bunch of old people like us?" Quite taken aback, I confess that earlier in the day, I had asked myself the exact same question. But so much has happened since then, I began. I searched for words to explain the intense involvement, the excitement, and the peace I felt at that moment. My eyes lit on Sarah. When I walked in here, Sarah was in the 5th row, and now she's in the 4th. And Sarah stood, raised her fist, and cried, "You ain't seen nothing yet. I just got started." Then all of us began to clap, and we clapped and clapped and clapped. The applause went far beyond the point of clapping for Sarah. We were clapping for the joy of being alive. As I walked out of that room, the clock said 10 minutes to 4. I was walking on air, and I had time for everything. The whole experience was one of radiating possibility. Later, I remembered a parable my father used to tell that speaks of our unlimited understanding of the nature of the gifts the universe holds in store for us. 4 young men sit by the bedside of their dying father. The old man, with his last breath, tells them, "There is a huge treasure buried in the family fields." The sons crowd around him, crying, Where? But it's too late. The day after the funeral, for many days to come, the young men go out with their picks and shovels and turn the soil, digging deeply into the ground. From one end of each field to the other, they find nothing and, bitterly disappointed, abandon the search. The next season, the farm has its best harvest ever. 2 prime ministers are sitting in a room discussing affairs of state. Suddenly a man bursts in, apoplectic with fury, shouting and stamping and banging his fist on the desk. The resident prime minister admonishes him. "Peter," he says, "kindly remember rule number 6. Whereupon Peter is instantly restored to complete calm, apologizes, and withdraws. The politicians return to their conversation, only to be interrupted yet again, 20 minutes later, by a hysterical woman gesticulating wildly, her hair flying. Again, the intruder is greeted with the words, "Marie, please remember rule number 6. Complete calm descends once more, and she too withdraws with a bow and an apology. When the scene is repeated for a 3rd time, the visiting prime minister addresses his colleague. "My dear friend, I've seen many things in my life, but never anything as remarkable as this. Would you be willing to share with me the secret of rule number 6? "Very simple," replies the resident prime minister. "Rule number 6 is don't take yourself so goddamn seriously. Ah, says his visitor, that is a fine rule. After a moment of pondering, he inquires, and what, may I ask, are the other rules? There aren't any. What would have to change for me to be completely fulfilled? The answer to this question will clue us into the conditions our calculating self finds threatening or even intolerable. And we may see that our zeal to bring about change may benefit from a lighter touch. The intolerable condition may be a place or a situation, but very often it is another person. Unlike the calculating self, the central self is neither a pattern of action nor a set of strategies. It does not need an identity. It is its own pure expression. It is what a person who has survived and knows it looks like. The central self smiles at the calculating self's perceptions, understanding that they are the relics of her ancestry, the necessary illusions of childhood. Fine if the child thinks there is such a thing as not belonging, so he can shriek and wail at the first hint of being forgotten at the grocery store. Fine if he should think that he needs to be stronger or smarter than others to stay alive, so he will exercise his mind and body, resist drowning, and get to the food first. When we follow rule number 6 and lighten up over our childish demands and entitlements, we are instantly transported into a remarkable universe. This new universe is cooperative in nature and pulls for the realization of all our cooperative desires. For the most part, it lies a bit above our heads. Angels can fly there because, as you may have heard, they take themselves lightly. But now, with the help of a single rule, so can we. From the film Babe, the scene, Christmas Day on the farm. The pig, cow, hens, and Ferdinand the duck crowd by the kitchen window, craning their necks to see which unfortunate one of their kind has been chosen to become the main course at dinner. On the platter is Rosanna the duck, dressed with sauce l'orange. Duck Ferdinand. Why, Rosanna? She had such a beautiful nature. I can't take it anymore. It's too much for a duck. It eats away at the soul. Cow. The only way to find happiness is to accept the way things are is the way things are. Duck, the way things are stinks. The cow expresses an oft-repeated philosophy, while the duck, if truth be told, speaks for most of us, not only about the way things are, but also about the cow's sanctimonious and resigned attitude toward life. Presumably, the cow will go like a lamb to the slaughter while the duck will look for means of escape. But what if there is no apparent way out? Will the duck spend what he conceives to be his last days of misery, flapping against the walls of his cage? The practice in this chapter is an antidote both to the hopeless resignation of the cow and to the spluttering resistance of the duck. It is to be present to the way things are, including our feelings about the way things are. This practice can help us clarify the next step that will take us in the direction we say we want to go. The calculating self is threatened by such intent. Why hang around and feel like a sucker, it asks. But the central self expands and develops with each new experience. What is here now, it asks, and then what else is here now? Being present to the way things are is not the same as accepting things as they are in the resigned way of the cow. It doesn't mean you should drown out your negative feelings or pretend you like what you really can't stand. It doesn't mean you should work to achieve some high place of existence so you can transcend negativity. It simply means being present without resistance, being present to what is happening and present to your reactions, no matter how intense. Being with the way things are by clearing shoulds. When we dislike a situation, we tend to put all our attention on how things should be rather than how they are. How many times have we addressed a should-be child and found our words quite irrelevant to the child we got? The stakes really go up when the issue is not rain or a child's whine, but hunger, tyranny, or global warming. When our attention is primarily directed to how wrong things are, we lose our power to act effectively. We may have difficulty understanding the total context, discussing what to do next, or you may overlook the people who should not have done what they did as we think about a solution. Being with the way things are by closing the exits, escape, denial, and blame. Some feelings are just plain unpleasant, like being too cold or having a stomach ache. Others, like grief or anguish or rage, seem so intense they threaten to overwhelm us, and we look for an exit. We resist the feelings or turn our back on the situation or foist the blame and the responsibility onto others. Closing the exits means staying with the feelings, whatever they are. It means letting them run their course as a storm sweeps overhead, showering rain and thunder, only to be followed by clear patches of blue. Being with the way things are by clearing judgments. The rain in Florida may be bad for us and good for the citrus crop. A canceled flight may wreck our schedule and bring us face to face with our future spouse in the airport lounge. A forest fire may seem to destroy our ecosystem in the short run, yet renew it with vigor for the long term. Nature makes no judgment. Humans do. And while our willingness to distinguish good and evil may be one of our most enhancing attributes, it is important to realize that good and bad are categories we impose on the world. They are not of the world itself. A man goes to see his rabbi. Rabbi, he asks, you told us a story, something to do with praise. The rabbi responds, yes, it is thus. When you get some good news, you thank the Lord. And when you get some bad news, you praise the Lord. Of course, replies the man, I should have remembered. But Rabbi, how do you actually know which is the good news and which is the bad news? The rabbi smiles. You're wise, my son. So just to be safe, always thank the Lord. Being with the way things are by distinguishing physical from conceptual reality. Both parents turned to their son and waited. The boy said nothing. You see, said his father, and went on to elaborate the image. The boy had closeted himself, and the father wanted more of something, more information, more contact. Now, this is such a common way of speaking that its inventive power can easily pass us by unnoticed. The father spoke about a barrier to communication that the boy had created, but of course, it only appeared when the father called it up. By the alchemy of language, the four people in the room were instantly transfigured into four people and a wall. The more the father described it, the more the wall increased in density and the more invisible the boy grew behind it. Taking the boy's silence as further evidence of the barrier, the father seemed unaware that he hadn't made any request of his son or addressed him at all. This well-intentioned man did not realize that by insisting on there being a wall between them, he had built something more solid than if he had taken mortar and brick and erected an unscalable rampart to divide them. Every bit of communication from then on related to the wall. Every silence was evidence of its enduring presence. How life-giving a tiny shift in speaking could become. Imagine this conversation. Are you willing to pretend that there is a wall between us? The father asks. And if the boy agrees, they dismantle the wall in play where it belongs. Perhaps the young man suggests another metaphor that he feels invisible to his parents. Startled, the adults begin to put their attention on the boy in the flesh in the room with them, with whom real relationship can grow. Imagine that the father begins a conversation with, son, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Or son, what about this whole situation makes you the most angry? Or son, I'm about to tell you something I've never told anyone before. The boy looks up at his father, and they have taken their first steps on a journey of possibility. Abstractions that we unwillingly treat as physical reality tend to block us from seeing the way things are, and therefore reducing our power to accomplish what we say we want. The practice of this chapter, giving way to passion, has two steps. One, the first step is to notice where you are holding back and let go. Release those barriers of yourself that keep you separate and in control, and the vital energy of passion surge through you, connecting you to all beyond. Two, the second step is to participate wholly. Allow yourself to be a channel to shape the stream of passion into a new expression for the world. The practice. Enrollment is the practice of this chapter. Enrolling is not about forcing, cajoling, tricking, bargaining, pressuring, or guilt-tripping someone into do something your way. Enrollment is the art and practice of generating a spark of possibility for others to share. In the Middle Ages, when lighting a fire from scratch was an arduous process, people often carried around a metal box containing a smoldering cinder kept alight throughout the day with little bits of kindling. This meant that a man could light a fire with ease wherever he went because he always carried the spark. But our universe is alive with sparks. We have at our fingertips an infinite capacity to light a spark of possibility. The practice, part one. So the first part of the practice is to declare, I am the framework for everything that happens in my life. This is perhaps the most radical and elusive of all the practices in this book, and it is also one of the most powerful. Here is another way of saying it. If I cannot be present without resistance to the way things are and act effectively, if I feel myself to be wrong, the loser, or victim, I will tell myself that some assumption I have made is the source of my difficulty. It is not that this practice offers the right choice or the only choice. We may want to make sure the intoxicated driver gets his due. We may want sympathy and we may want revenge. Being derailed from our larger purpose for a length of time may be an acceptable option. However, choosing the being the board approach opens the possibility of a graceful journey, one that quickly reinstates us on the path we choose before the fateful collision intervenes. It allows us to keep on track. Grace comes from the owning the risks we take in a world by and large immune to our control. If you build your house on a floodplain of the Mississippi River, you may be devastated when the waters overflow and you may rail at the river. However, when you declare yourself an unwilling victim of a known risk, you have postured yourself as a poor loser in a game you chose to play. Out of a sense of self-righteousness, you will have given away your chance to be effective. Perhaps to gain other people's sympathy, you will have traded your own peace of mind. In the legal sphere, fault and blame play an important role. The law-abiding driver is entitled to sue the perpetrator to cover his losses, however they be construed. But we are talking about access to possibility, not to victory or remuneration. Gracing yourself with responsibility for everything that happens in your life leaves your spirit whole and leaves you free to choose again. When you are being the board, you present no obstacles to others. You name yourself as the instrument to make all your relationships into effective partnerships. Imagine how profoundly trustworthy you would be to the people who work for you if they felt no problem could arise between you that you were not prepared to own. Imagine how much incentive they would have to cooperate if they knew they could count on you to clear the pathways for accomplishment. This practice launches you on a soaring journey of transformation and development with others, a completely different route than the one of managing relationships to avoid conflict. It calls for courage and compassion. You do not find compassion simply by listening to people. You open the channel by removing the barriers to tenderness within you. Among the rewards of self-respect, connection of the deepest and most vital kind, and a straight road to making a difference. A vision becomes a framework for possibility when it meets certain criteria that distinguish it from the objectives of the downward spiral. Here are the criteria that enable a vision to stand in the universe of possibility. A vision articulates a possibility. A vision fulfills the desire fundamental to humankind, a desire within which any human being can resonate. It is an idea to which no one could logically respond, what about me? A vision makes no reference to morality or ethics. It is not about a right way of doing things. It cannot imply that anyone is wrong. A vision is stated as a picture for all time, using no numbers, measures, or comparatives. It contains no specifics of time, place, audience, or product. The practice of framing possibility calls upon us to use our minds in a manner that is counterintuitive, to think in terms of the context that govern us rather than the evidence we see before our eyes. It trains us to be alert to a new danger that threatens modern life, the danger that unseen definitions, assumptions, and frameworks may be covertly chaining us to the downward spiral and shaping the conditions we want to change. But look what magical powers we have. We can make a conscious use of our way with words to define new frameworks for possibility that bring out the part of us that is most contributory, most unencumbered, and most open to participation. And why not say that is who we really are? Here's an example of a leader framing possibility, offering a new way for us to define ourselves. Nelson Mandela is reported to have addressed these words of Marianne Williamson to the world at large. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. To begin the inquiry, we have distinguished a new entity that personifies the togetherness of you and me and others. This entity, the we, can be found among any two people in any community or organization, and it can be thought of in poetic terms as a melody running through the people of the earth. It emerges in the way music emerges from individual notes when a phrase is played as one long line, in the way a landscape coalesces out of the multicolored strokes of an impressionist painting when you get some distance, and in the way a family comes into being when a first child is born. The we appears when, for the moment, we set aside the story of fear, competition, and struggle and tell its story. The we story defines a human being in a specific way. It says we are our central selves, seeking to contribute, naturally engaged forever in a dance with each other. It points to relationship rather than to individuals, to communication patterns, gestures, and movement, rather than to discrete objects and identities. It attests to the in-between, like the particle and wave nature of light. The we is both a living entity and a long line of development unfolding. This new being, the we of us, comes into view as we look for it, the vital entity of our company, our community, or group of two. Then the protagonist of our story, the entity called we, steps forward and takes on a life of its own. By telling the we story, an individual becomes a conduit for this new inclusive entity, wearing its eyes and ears, feeling its heart, thinking its thoughts, inquiring into what is best for us. This practice points the way to a kind of leadership based not on qualifications earned in the field of battle, but on the courage to speak on behalf of all people and for the long line of human possibility. The steps to the we practice are these. 1, tell the we story, the story of the unseen threads that connect us all, the story of possibility. 2, listen and look for the emerging entity. 3, ask, what do we want to have happen here? What's best for us, each of us, and all of us? What's our next step?